This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, as always, is Ricky Widmer.
What's up, guys?
And Dave Oster.
Hey, everybody.
And today we are continuing our series of ranking the starting players in the NBA by position, and we are now on the power forward. So before we jump into our rankings that get so many, like the critical acclaim on these rankings are so high. Like, I think it's 5 stars out of 5.
Yeah.
No one has any complaints.
I haven't seen a 6 on one of these. Dave Meltzer. Pretty big fan.
Meltzer.
In the Tokyo Dome, small forward position rankings. Although it was, in my personal opinion, the worst episode we've ever recorded. Got a 6 in the Tokyo Dome. Before we get into the whole rankings, we got to do some housekeeping. Don't forget to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. If you want to be on a podcast, pick the topic, be on a segment, head over and check out that $10 tier. We also have a monthly Patreon podcast. We also have some other perks at the $5 tier, so definitely go check that out. Also, check out mostvaluablepodcast.com if you don't want to miss any segments, full podcast, articles. Go over there and check that out. We also have a store on there if you want to check that out. Buy an MVP t-shirt. And finally, don't forget to rate us 5 stars on iTunes. I just checked. I think we have 37 reviews.
It's pretty awesome.
On iTunes with a 4.5 rating.
Not bad. Let's just keep working that up to the 5.
I feel pretty good. So if you want to help support us in any way, that's how you can do that. But let's jump in, boys, into our rankings. It is a Wednesday podcast, throwing off the schedule a little bit because we're working boys. Like that Sigourney Weaver. I can't speak. That
Sigourney Weaver
movie, Working Girls, we're working boys.
I don't quite.
Let's jump
move on.
I want to give a shout out to, I think it's Matt in the comments. He always leaves the timestamp of when we actually start talking about the topic. So shout out Matt on YouTube. But anyways, let's jump in. 30 through 21, we are going to go and give a starting power forwards. At 30 of the Oklahoma City Thunder, we have Jeremy Grant. At 29, we have Al-Faroua of the Portland Trail Blazers. At 28, we have Jaren Jackson Jr. of the Memphis Grizzlies. At 27, we have Thad Young of the Indiana Pacers. At 26, we have Kevin Knox of the New York Knicks. At 25, we have Marvin Williams of the Charlotte Hornets. At 24, we have PJ Tucker of the Houston Rockets. At 23, we have Marvin Bagley of the Sacramento Kings. At 22, we have OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors. And at 21, we have Markieff Morris from the Washington Wizards. Also, shout out to somebody, I think it was in the small forwards 11 through 20, said that we make garbage videos because we don't talk about all the players in a half hour. So maybe we'll get to all these players, but let's start off with the rookies at least. We got Kevin Knox, Jaren Jackson, and Marvin Bagley in this ranking. I'm going to go to Dave first before we go to Ricky and his thoughts on these rookies. Dave, you had all of these guys within the 21 through 30 range.
Yep.
Highest being Kevin Knox at 24, Jaren Jackson at 26, and then Marvin Bagley at 29. Why did you personally rank those guys that way?
So I just want to start by clarifying, we are putting Kevin Knox as a power forward in these rankings because of the injury, obviously, to KP. He'll get out there hopefully a little bit into the year, but Kevin Knox...
January or February is KP's.
We're hopeful.
I mean, depending on the record, might just shut him down the whole year.
We'll see. But what this does mean is Kevin Knox has a hell of an opportunity, and that is why I've ranked him higher than the other 2 rookies on this list, because I believe that his chance to be the guy on a team where right now all the scoring is going through Tim Hardaway Jr. So they've added another piece of Mario Hezonja this offseason. They've got a decent young guard rotation they're going to work out. But right now, what we saw to Kevin Knox in Summer League was inefficient, but there was something special about it. Like, when you're watching him, there's just something that makes it look like, yeah, he's a much better player than he showed in college. He looks much more comfortable at the 4. And I really think the upside's there. So given the increase of usage and minutes that he will see due to KP being out, I had to put him above Jaren Jackson Jr., who I loved coming into the league. I thought he was going to be a stud. He's a walk-in. He's going to contribute to a potential playoff team with the Grizzlies. And then Bagley at 29, because honestly, that is a deep rotation they have at the 4 and the 5. His Summer League was concerning. If you force him right, he's basically useless. So, Like that's just a quick overview of the rookies and why I landed them in that order.
And before we go to Ricky again, I'm going to go with mine. I had Jaren Jackson at 25, Marvin Bagley at 26, Kevin Knox at 27. Just put them all in one bunch because I think they're all going to have an importance to their team. And I think the biggest importance will end up being Jaren Jackson to the Memphis Grizzlies because some people think that this team will make the playoffs because obviously they have Marc Gasol, they have Mike Conley, they have a ton of veterans on that team, and Jaren Jackson at that 4 position, he's going to bring offense to you. He's going to be able to bring an outside shot at that 4 position. He's also going to bring next level defense as well. That's what people loved out of him from college. Obviously, he's got to work on that foul trouble, but being next to a guy in Marc Gasol who is a very smart defender, a very a guy who isn't majorly athletic but has been such a great defender throughout his career, has used his basketball IQ to his advantage. Hopefully, he can pass that off to Jaren Jackson. I think Jaren Jackson is going to have the biggest impact out of the rookies. Might not have the best stat line, but at least out of these rookies, will have the most importance to his team, where Marvin Bagley might have that eye-popping stat line, and Kevin Knox might have the more eye-popping highlights. I think in the end, though, Jaren Jackson is going to be the most efficient and most impactful. That's why I ranked it Jackson, Bagley, and Knox. But Ricky, you went a little bit different. You had Jaren Jackson where we had him. You had him at 27. I had him at 25. Dave had him at 26. And you had Kevin Knox where Dave had him at 24. But Marvin Bagley is a little bit hard to find on yours. Tell him where you ranked Marvin Bagley.
I ranked him at number 12, and that's because of, for me, it's all potential. Like, with the Kings, you don't draft Marvin Bagley at number 2 unless you expect him to do great things for you. And this is kind of like a more of a potential kind of spot. And it's like, you got to basically nut up or shut up for Marvin Bagley, because at the end of the year, if he doesn't show up and he proves this 12 ranking by me to be wrong, then many King fans are going to be sitting there going, why didn't we just take Luka? Why didn't we just take Luka at number 2?
But he can't have a struggle as a very young player. I mean, he was one of the youngest players in his draft class. I know Jaren Jackson was younger than him and one of the youngest, but still, Marvin Bagley was extremely young coming into this draft.
To me, with the rookies, it's when I rank the rookies, it's all on upside. Like last year, you noticed how everyone was upset with my Lonzo Ball ranking. However, the upside on Lonzo is still very high. Yeah, he had kind of a little bit of a struggle rookie year. It wasn't like an offensive rookie of the year. He wasn't a great defensive rookie of the year. He wasn't even rookie of the year. But
he was not rookie of the year.
We're still high on Lonzo. We're not saying that he's a bust. Bagley might be the same way. He's going to have, to me, the most potential. Kevin Knox is right there after, because I think he'll do good things with the Knicks.
Hold on, not right there, because he is a whole 12 positions below him.
I'm saying like Bagley's 1 for the rookies, Kevin Knox is 2 for the rookies in my mind.
But I'm saying like there is a large separation in your mind.
Because
so what makes up that separation?
There's other players in these rankings. Like for me, I feel like Marvin Bagley potentially could be a guy that we look at better than a Derek Favors, better than a Trevor Ariza, better than a Dario Saric.
What will he be doing
he's
better
gonna,
than these
like
players?
you said, he's going to have that eye-popping stat line, and that's what we're going to look at, the eye-popping stat line. He might have phenomenal dunks, phenomenal highlights later in the year. I'm not saying he's going to do that day one compared to a Jaren Jackson who's, he's on a playoff team, but out of the 3, he's going to need the most work in my mind. And then a Kevin Knox, who, I think that Jaren Jackson
that's the interesting,
is going to take a little bit to... Marvin Bagley might be the youngest, but Jaren Jackson in Summer League didn't look he didn't look the best in Summer League either. And for me, I feel like at the end, it's going to be Bagley, Knox, and Jaren Jackson.
Were you watching Jaren Jackson Summer League? He was better than Marvin Bagley in the Summer League.
Man was
I'm not saying that Marvin Bagley was phenomenal, but there were things Jaren Jackson's like, he's going to need to fix that in the NBA.
And Marvin Bagley has also many things to fix, where Jaren Jackson was more efficient from 3,
I'm saying
where it's going to be
the potential for me,
primarily where he works.
The potential for me, and also on the team they are on, is greater for Bagley than a Jaren Jackson.
Dave, this kind of goes maybe into the whole Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell thing. People wanted Devin Booker above Donovan Mitchell because, again, of the stat line, 25, 5, and 5.
Yep.
Offensively, Devin Booker is a stud, where Donovan Mitchell was fantastic and massively important to that Utah Jazz team. Made it to the playoffs. That's why we put Donovan Mitchell above Devin Booker. Do you think that's a possibility with at least what Ricky's going with the Marvin Bagley, Jaren Jackson?
I think that it's an interesting call, because I believe Jaren Jackson is the advanced stat monster. That's why everyone loved him coming out of college. We didn't get to see the minutes of him. He never got to show that he could truly dominate a game. And that's the one thing that I will give Marvin Bagley credit for, is he is offensively and in transition a scary player and one of the best in this class. But what concerns me already is the defensive concerns, the fact that they ended up using Wendell Carter Jr. basically to kind of cover up for some of those weaknesses that he has on the defensive end, especially when it comes to going out and playing a little bit further on the perimeter and then even going back to the basket. But like, I think that the upside for offense is there for Bagley, that it's, again, I kind of want to go back to the old argument. Who's the guy the Bulls just signed? I literally mouth with names. The small forward of the Bulls right now.
Oh, Jabari Parker.
Yeah, Jabari Parker. You don't get paid for defense, and that is the Marvin Bagley argument going into this draft. Is you don't get paid for defense, so he got picked at 2 because his offensive game demands that he's a top worthy pick.
Real quick on the counterpoint. You look at that summer league though, and again, I know it's just summer league. It's 8 games or whatever. Not even 8 games.
The vets aren't out there either.
You still look at Marvin Bagley, and defensively, that was something that really surprised me, that he was much better defensively in the summer league, where offensively he didn't look as consistent as we expect him and as dominant as we expect him to be. Do you think that might end up being the case in some ways? Because he is still extremely athletic, and you can still learn how to play defense.
Yeah.
So do you think that maybe, again, he might not find consistency in his offensive game, and maybe we do see some of his defensive upside possibly show this year?
I'm not buying in on the defense. I think you may see 1 or 2 good plays out of him on the defensive end throughout the whole year. I think this year he's really looking to find the groove with that offense. That Kings offense is going to be interesting because he's vying for time. And I know you say he's going to come in and blow people out of the water, but like they have like 3 guys at power forward. They've got 2 guys at center who all are kind of interchangeable at this point in their careers. So I think that the thing for him is he needs to separate himself early and demand those minutes and earn those minutes, I should say, because guys like Skal have had their chance, and Skal looks okay. He doesn't look like he's going to be a franchise-changing player. You know, Harry Giles, we're going to see what he does coming back from his year's worth of building up physically and preparing his body to be 100% coming to the season. So I think the competition's there. So if Bagley, the only way Bagley earns that number 12 ranking is by going out and just absolutely balling out and being, the franchise player that this Kings expect him to be at the number 2 pick.
Well, and I mean, the thing the Kings have competition there, and competition is good for players. You want to try to get the most out of Bagley.
Right.
He won't be able to sit there and be complacent. But like you said, Skal has had his time to shine, hasn't. You've got Harry Giles, who, he's looked good. He's been in shape. They gave him the entire last year to kind of rehab. But injury concerns, and how is he actually going to look once the season starts? And then it's like you look at the other bigs. Deonta Davis, who pretty much to me is a forgotten, I'm going to push him to the side, bust category from, I know he wasn't drafted really high, but a bust, don't even worry about him. And then a Zach Randolph, who is like, how old is Zach Randolph? So, I mean, there's competition there. But I feel like one of the big reasons why with the rookies, I ranked Bagley first, Knox second, and Jaren Jackson 3 is because Knox and Bagley are going to have more opportunities, and I fear that Jaren Jackson, because there's a Marc Gasol, because there's other veterans, unless they get injured, are going to kind of overmask Jaren Jackson, and he won't have the same opportunities as a Bagley or a Knox.
Okay, so I misheard you, I think. So you're saying that Knox and Bagley will be able to shine because of their usage.
Well, not necessarily usage, but like you look at the other players on those rosters. Kevin Knox, if he balls out, he could become the starter. Like right now, you look at the Knicks
have
team.
Him as the starter, and most likely he's going to be the starter. And the only way he doesn't is if they put Hazonia.
I'm talking about it on sense of like a star player that people kind of draw to. Where you look at the Knicks, we want Frank to be that, but he's not. Right now, I would say with KP being out. Tim Hardaway is
Enos
the guy.
Cantor, respect the man.
But he's a 5,
social media
and I am
monster.
not going to go with a 5 over a 2. And then it's with the Suns. It's like, it could be a De'Aaron Fox, but also Marvin Bagley has that star level ability in him. I believe. Where the Grizzlies, they got Marc Gasol, they got Conley, they have a Parsons off the bench. They could possibly overlaps Jaren Jackson. Could be a good thing because, hey, he can kind of hide in the shadows and do his thing, or it could be Hayes over Max.
My thing, again, with Jaren Jackson is that he's going to be extremely efficient in that role. He proved that at Michigan State. He's going to be a guy that does everything well on both ends. Will he be scoring 14 points in a game? Probably not. But will he be efficient? Will he be out there on both ends and helping the Grizzlies win games? Yes, and I think that will be very apparent when Jaren Jackson steps out there. Where Marvin Bagley, again, he might get usage. He might get a ton of opportunities to shine. But then again, if he comes out there and isn't really efficient right away and isn't helping this Kings team win games with that competition, he might be pushed out of the starting lineup, and a guy like Harry Giles might get his time to shine because he really hasn't. He's still technically a rookie. So I think that's something that might kill his confidence and might be something that, maybe it hurts his October, maybe it hurts his November, maybe it starts happening in January. It might have an effect where for a long stretch throughout this season, Marvin Bagley might not be a confident player where he might not be able to do much with that usage, where Jaren Jackson will be put into a very specific role where he will be at least hopefully be able to shine in that Memphis offense and that Memphis defense, where they might not need to rely on a rookie to do as much as they need him to, and will at least rely on the skills he already has to help this team win games. I think that's the biggest thing with what we saw with Donovan Mitchell. The expectations weren't massively high for Donovan Mitchell. He stepped in, did what he needed to do, gained confidence, and then skyrocketed. Jason Tatum wasn't expected to do much right away because he had Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart in front of him, but injuries happened. Jason Tatum was put into a specific role, and he was able to gain confidence throughout that Boston system. I think a lot of this needs to deal with confidence in a system. I think Jaren Jackson will be able to have, or at least has the best advantage to at least gain that confidence. I think Kevin Knox, unfortunately, has the least amount of room to gain that confidence just because, again, he's in New York, and he's going to be competing for time against Mario Hezonja, Tim Hardaway Jr., Frank, obviously. And I think one thing with Kevin Knox is he's got a lot of room to grow, but he needs to do that growing. And growing in New York, especially throughout the season, is going to be difficult, not impossible, but I think it's going to be something where he's going to go through his struggles. But while New York isn't a great team, especially with their star player KP out, he might not have that ability to, again, put a lot of consistency through it, and that's why I had him at least below Bagley and Jackson, because his skills really aren't as fleshed out as the other two are.
Well, and just the one thing I was going to say to retort a little bit is the whole Bagley-Giles thing too is if you're going to start Bagley, in my mind, it's going to be very hard to pull him and put him on the bench because you look at the last few players that have been drafted at number 2, Lonzo Ball, B.I., D'Angelo Williams, and then the fourth would be Jabari Parker. Those aren't guys that you're throwing out there their rookie year and then saying, you know what, we're going to pull you back. We're going to put you on the bench. It's like you got to live up to that number 2, and that might be a pressure for the Kings where it's like, we can't bench him because of how high we drafted him.
But I mean, again, I'm not saying you're not benching him because he's a bad player and it looks like a mistake, but you're benching him because there's players. But then we are talking about, is Marvin Bagley a bust? No, what's going on? Because he's 19 years old. It's not sensical to call a guy who's 19 years old and with a player who's 20 years old and still a rookie to take a starting spot and call him a bust. You could still give a guy 28 minutes off the bench, and especially Marvin Bagley, if you're trying to gain confidence against him, don't throw him up against the starting lineup. Throw him against the second team where he could possibly dominate and grow that at least confidence up. I'm just saying that there might be a possibility with Harry Giles being so young and them putting effort and an investment into him, that if he looks like the better player, it would be the smart move, weirdly enough, to put him in the starting lineup and help your team win games. I think that's the goal for any NBA team, and if one is going to help you win more than the other at the current moment, that is going to be who you're going with. It doesn't mean Harry Giles has more potential and is going to be a star later down the road and has more of a shot as that than Marvin Bagley does, but at least at the moment in 2018, 2019, Harry Giles might be at least a better fit for your team to help you win games. That's all I'm saying. If it happens this season where he starts and then gets benched by Giles, I guarantee people will be talking about, is Marvin Bagley a bust? And they will be stupid to say that. Frank, anything you want to say?
Yeah, I got plenty. So De'Aaron Fox, the number 5 pick by the Kings, did not start every single game last year. Yeah. So I'm not saying that Marvin Bagley. I wouldn't say Marvin Bagley has to start every game this year.
Drafting someone at number 2 and number 5 are.
I think there's no difference. I absolutely believe there's no difference, especially because De'Aaron Fox coming out of college looked like a straight up stud as well as Marvin Bagley. Second note, it's the fucking Kings. Like, can you be honest about this? Like, if there's a team that can mismanage player development, just be honest and say it's the Kings. So like, don't be all can't miss. No. This is the Kings. they can mishandle the way these players are set up in these lineups. We saw it last year. I think
Lottie's an idiot sometimes.
I think that there are teams still trying to find their direction, offensively, defensively. Like maybe they have something with a couple of these pieces. We all expect Bogey's usage to go up this season. He really excelled. De'Aaron Fox showed a little bit at the end of late last year, but I think by no means they have anything locked in as far as Marvin Bagley and Harry Giles. The other note I want to make is you guys were discussing Jaren Jackson and tossing out a couple of comparisons. I think the easy one that you might have missed out on is OG Anunoby, a guy on this list as well. A guy who he had a different situation exiting college, obviously coming off of a terrible injury, but at the same time, he came into a playoff team, good system, found his niche role, and excelled at it. He was a 3-and-D player to the core, was able to go up there, defend the best of them, and play excellent defense. His shooting, he wasn't asked to do a ton of volume, but when he shot, he was mostly accurate. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is better defensively than OG, and offensively, we'll see where the shot lands. He was known for having a low angle shot, but you know what? If it goes in, it goes in, and that's kind of the thing with him. So I think that he's going to find like you said, even if he doesn't end up with a starting role for the entirety, or if he goes a low minute starter role,
you're talking about OG?
No, I'm talking about Jaren Jackson, modeling after OG.
Yeah, okay.
Obviously, different coaching staff, different circumstances there, but that's sort of the player that I could see him easily modeling towards as a player who defensively brings it and is asked to do a specific role on offense, not asked to overextend himself like some of these other rookies.
And one thing with Jaren Jackson too, compared to OG, and we'll move on from because OG's on this list and I want to talk about him, and we can transition into him. Is at least Jaren Jackson didn't deal with the injury problems that OG was dealing with coming out of Indiana, and that was one thing again that he had to deal with that ACL tear and then go into the NBA draft. Was drafted by the Toronto Raptors. We have him at 22. Yeah, we have him at 22. I have him, I think, ranked the highest. I'm going to just double check that. I had him at 18, and you both had him at 23. The reason why I had him ranked that high is, yes, he wasn't majorly efficient and consistent offensively, but defensively, like you mentioned, he's an absolute stud.
And he gets Kawhi next to him now.
Exactly. He gets Kawhi next to him. He gets Danny Green next to him. And I think that's just going to be even seen in a brighter light because he's going to have that help with Kawhi and Danny Green, Kyle Lowry and Valanciunas as well. But I think he's going to be a guy that really takes that next step because that athleticism is there. His defensive ability is extremely impressive. And he might, at some point, I'm not saying I'm saying this is his max ceiling. At some point, he might be able to turn into someone like Jimmy Butler, who went from a guy who was strictly used as a defensive guy, and then started to get confident in his offensive game, mold it, and become the player he is today. Kawhi Leonard, same thing. A guy who was known for his defense, was able to mold and grow into his offensive game. Maybe he's not to those level of these players where he's in the top 5 of his position, but I think he has a massive room to grow and to become a great player in the NBA. And he showed it last year. He stepped up in big moments in the playoffs. He guarded some of the best players in those playoff series, and he went in. And I think having Kawhi next to him is going to be even a bigger boost because he's not going to have to deal with DeRozan slacking on defense. He's not going to have to deal with a weird pairing of having Serge out there, Valanciunas. I think the lineup is more succinct, and having Nick Nurse now take over I think is going to be huge for OG Anunoby, and I think his growth is going to be massive where he might be able to jump a guy like Trevor Ariza, James Johnson, Derek Favors, some of these veterans in this list because again his potential is massive, and we talked about that when he was coming out of Indiana.
I loved him in Indiana. I mean he was a phenomenal talent, obviously carried that team on his back when healthy. I think that even with the injury, I think that there's like almost no fall off. Like I think he can get right back to where he was. My arc for him coming out of college, like unchanged by the injury, which was really impressive that he was able to rehab, come back, and be ready to play this whole season out.
Well, and the thing that I really like, kind of going what Sean was saying with the Kawhi thing, is you see players sometimes where it's like you look at their offense and you go, man, they're dipping on offense, they're dipping on their shot, and then the color commentator will be like, yeah, but look at how much energy they're expending on defense, and that's like playing right into their offense and kind of killing their legs. With Kawhi next to him, how much is having another player that is a defensive stalwart, and I call Kawhi a defensive stalwart, hey, I can maybe not have to work as hard defensively because I have help with Kawhi. What is that going to do then for his offensive game? Because to me with OG, it's obviously I like his defensive game better than his offensive game. With having a guy like Kawhi, who is going to be better defensively than a DeMar DeRozan, how does that play into OG maybe not having to work as hard on defense and kind of moving that into his offense? Exactly.
Every single play.
Kawhi will do that.
I think one thing too is again he had to make I think we expect too much from rookies. Where in the regular, I mean we're talking about fucking Marvin Bagley.
Well, we just get so hyped about him. Well,
but
Marvin Bagley is different. Like OG wasn't a 1-2 pick in the draft.
No, but you're still hyped about him. I think you're overly hyped about him. I think that's a fair thing to say. But you look at his playoff performance last year, and he was magnificent in the playoffs. I mean, you look at him. I think his per game totals 7 points, but he ended up shooting 44% from three and 55% from the field. Was extremely efficient. And I think one thing, at least, that bringing in Kawhi is, yes, he won't have to go up against the number ones consistently, but I think one thing too is he's not going to have to at least. I think one thing is that his shot selection got better throughout the season. Absolutely. And I think having Kawhi, who is going to be able to be at least extend out behind the three-point line more than DeRozan was able to, have Danny Green, who's able to extend out behind the three-point line, and have Kyle Lowry take on more of a traditional point guard role is going to be beneficial to those three players, where OG is going to be seen as the fourth, really probably even the fifth option, at times fourth or fifth option, splitting with that with Danny Green. He's going to be seen less. I think that's going to mean he's going to take more wide open shots. He's going to have ability to think, process his shot, and gain more confidence. I think the biggest thing with OG is if his usage isn't high, he's going to be able to be efficient offensively, and defensively we already know what he is. So again, I think the biggest thing for him is just, again, having Kawhi be there, because that's going to open up Toronto's offense even more than having DeRozan out there, because DeRozan took up so much usage, where Kawhi, even though he has a high usage, he is a guy that still distributes the ball well. He's a guy that, again, isn't going to be putting up like near 29 points per game. He's a guy that is very modest. He's going to play team basketball. I think that's going to end up helping OG Anunoby's offense, and that's why we might see the increase there. Not really because he's not going to be guarding ones, because I think he's got a great gas tank.
Like crazy as well, too.
And they're still going to be playing Surge a ton as well. So I think in the end, though, it's just going to be a way that the offense is changing that's going to help his efficiency and his offensive game grow.
I thought that was
cool. All right, well, OG's done.
I thought you nailed that one.
Awkward pause.
But
cool.
If you want me to keep going,
no, it's fine. Yeah, fuck it. All right, we talked about OG, we talked about Marvin Bagley, we talked about Kevin Knox, we talked about Jaren Jackson. I want to hit as many people as we can, but we're running out of time. So just pick a player and talk about it.
PJ Tucker. And the reason why I mentioned him is, to me, he was an interesting one for my rankings, because when I'm talking everyday regular season, will probably be overlooked. Like, he's a player that it's like, you know what? Everyday regular season, we're not going to focus too much on him. But to me, the value in PJ Tucker and why I had him in the upper half of this part of the rankings is when we get to the playoffs, he was crucial for that Rockets team. I know they lost to the Warriors, but he was crucial in keeping them in series and being a guy who could help challenge the Warriors, and why they were in that series and almost won that series. So that's why PJ Tucker was a weird one for me. Regular season might not be as valuable, but playoff will be super valuable to this Rocket team.
Dave, one guy I want to throw out there: OKC. Are they going to be the best defensive team in the league next year with the players they have in Jeremy Grant, Andre Roberson, Paul George?
Honestly, those three together is scary as hell, I'll be honest. But
even having Russ at the 1-2.
Yeah, I'd say like they're dirty, but I think Toronto, you just mentioned, like Danny Green, Lowry, OG, and Kawhi. Like those four are just right on par, even with OKC. I think those two together, pretty spot on. Jeremy Grant, I don't know. I wish Terrence Ferguson could grow so they could slide people. Yeah. But we'll see. He was super young coming out, so maybe there's a lot of room for him to grow.
Yeah, and not only he had to transition from high school to China, then to the NBA. Yeah. So and Ferguson, again, he's massively athletic. And again, we expect way too much out of these rookies. So we'll, obviously, Grant's probably a placeholder for now, but he's still very useful defensively. Other names: Markieff Morris. We'll see how Washington plays out. He's going to be probably end up being the fifth option on that team, but he's still a decent player.
Yeah, by all means. Thad Young, Sabonis come for your ass. I'm just saying, get on that shit.
That's true. But the only reason why I think right now, and maybe this will change if Miles Turner's shot becomes more consistent, but Thad Young brings more of an outside shot where Sabonis is more inside. Do you think there's a possibility of them flipping Sabonis to the 5 and then Miles Turner to the 4?
Well, we did see Miles Turner, when not healthy, Sabonis was able to step in and start for them at the 5. That was an interesting lineup. I got to be honest, I would prefer to have Sabonis out there. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just falling off on the Miles Turner train. Like maybe that's just me. But I think they're not. I think they're still going to keep rolling Miles Turner out there. I just think Sabonis deserves the start or playing time, and he was just huge.
Miles Turner has gotten worse throughout his career. I mean, he's gotten less playing time, and his points per game has decreased. His percentage has gone up, but again, Miles Turner he's a guy that's still trying to find his confidence. But I think there's still a lot of potential with that kid.
Yeah.
We throw out Marvin Williams of the Hornets. He's just a guy that's been in the NBA for a while. There's nothing really too much to talk about it. He is a good shooter, but he's also overpaid. Which
no one's going to argue that.
But all of the Hornets are.
Yeah.
So shout out Marvin Williams.
Them and the Blazers.
Final one we didn't talk about was Al-Faroua, who's, again, good defensively, but
super quiet player. No, he doesn't do anything amazing. He plays good, solid defense, and that's about it.
He's a guy that, again, you look at his numbers, he takes like 8 shots a game, shoots 39% from the field. He takes 4 threes a game, shoots 39% from threes. He's a perfect 4. He plays great defense. He could shoot from 3. But he's a guy that could be super inexpensible if they want to move him to the bench. They can move him to the bench, but he can also be a bench player and be in the NBA for a while because he's a guy that does
young,
a lot
actually.
well.
It was weird. I didn't realize how. Yeah, he's not even over 30.
No way.
Yeah.
He's like 34. He's 27?
Right?
No way.
That was my face. It's the same thing.
He was drafted in 2010. What?
It's nuts.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Shout out Al-Faroua. All right. I always thought he went to Baylor, too. He went to Wake Forest. Who knew?
Last thing I want to throw out is, and this is, I didn't want to derail conversation, but ever since Dave, we were talking Bagley and De'Aaron Fox. When you mentioned he was 5. From 2016, so players that have been in the league a little bit, back to 2012, just interesting 2v5s.
Yep.
Number 2 in 2016, B.I. Number 5, Chris Dunn.
The real KD.
2015, D'Angelo Russell was at 2. Hazonia was at 5. Number 2014, Jabari Parker at 2. Dante Exum at 5. 2013, we had Vic at 2. Alex Len at 5.
Yeah, that's the only difference that I've been like, wow, there's a major talent difference there.
To me, the 2014 one, too, of Jabari Parker to Dante Exum, I would rather have Jabari Parker.
We're still waiting on Exum.
And then,
both players have not been healthy.
And then 2012, only because one is still in the league and the other one I don't think is in the league anymore. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist at 2. Thomas Robinson at 5.
Yeah, no, Thomas Robinson isn't in the league anymore.
He's holding on a G League spot, I believe.
Yeah, and Gilchrist is
so
bad.
Just kind of
got that hella hitch.
I did a little. It got me thinking, and just wanted to throw it. At
what
the
you
end.
just made me notice is a lot of second overall picks have sucked. D'Angelo Russell moving teams.
Hey. D'Angelo Russell is still putting up good numbers.
They drafted they kind of got replaced, didn't he? They were going to draft Lonzo Ball.
Yeah, he was also a snitch, so they moved him.
Yeah, that
was a locker room move.
Yeah. And also, real quick, someone got mad at me because I called Brandon Ingram overrated. I called him overrated in our rankings. He's not an overrated player. Also, overrated doesn't inherently mean bad. It just means that he's overrated. He can be good, but also
has a
overrated.
Negative connotation to it.
But also that's not what it means. Me calling him overrated in our rankings does not mean that he is a bad player. That's just something that I've noticed throughout my life and not in YouTube comments.
You're calling him bad to someone who feels like he is rated properly.
Okay, but that's my opinion. I think he's
overrated.
I know.
I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just clarifying for you.
So, whatever. Anyways,